The day last November, the 22nd, when John Kennedy was murdered in Dallas, Texas. Today, there was published the official American report into the tragedy. I hold it here, the Warren Report, named after its chairman, the Chief Justice of the United States, Earl Warren. A huge, painstaking, and quite remarkable investigation. Now, it finds, basically, that Lee Oswald killed President Kennedy and did it alone and not as a member of a conspiracy. That both the American Secret Service and the Federal Bureau of Investigation need to overhaul their systems of intelligence and protection. It finds that Jack Ruby was able to kill Lee Oswald while he was in Dallas police custody 2 days after the assassination because the police were using Oswald too much as a public exhibit with an eye to their good relations with the local press and with other news media, including television. Tonight, in the Panorama studio, we welcome one of America's foremost current affairs commentators, David Brinkley of NBC, who's followed the whole history of the Kennedy tragedy ever since last November. This is to show you how an assassin who fired 3 shots at the car, here's the representation, would have to do it in 5.5 seconds, which the Warren Report says he did. 3 shots, not 2 were fired. And this is how the assassin had to do it. Now, Brinkley, that would appear to establish the fact in the Warren Report that only one man was the assassin. Why do you think there have been so many stories about other people shooting from other directions?
Well, I think there have been 2 reasons. One was that a fragment of a bullet was found lying in the back of the car in such a way as to indicate it had been fired from another direction. The Warren Commission has found that it landed where it did because it ricocheted. The other reason is that the extreme left wing in the United States was most unhappy to find the murderer was one of them, and so some of its members have been painfully trying for about a year now to establish that Oswald was not the man, but in my opinion it failed.
Yes. And certainly agreed. One man only did this, and
yes.
This was the man.
Yes.
Well, now let's move on in time and go to the arrest of Oswald, his holding by the Dallas police, who, after the thing had happened, appeared to have acted very efficiently and quickly, I thought. Mm-hmm. And they, the Dallas police, had got the man in custody. They got him, in about an hour, I think, from the time that he actually shot. Mm-hmm. Tracked him through to his house, where he changed his clothes, into a cinema, where, in fact, he was finally arrested, having also shot a patrolman on the way when he was in his car. Right. So in some ways, no doubt, he had given his track away. Mm-hmm. Secret Service as well, it's agreed, I think, also acted with bravery, courage, skill, and with speed once the thing had happened. But
after the shooting.
After the shooting, which is, of course, not the important time. Then we have the moment, and here it is, when Jack Ruby shot Lee Oswald in Dallas custody.
There is Lee.
He's been shot. He's been shot. Lee Oswald has been shot. There's the man with a gun. It's absolute panic. Absolute panic here in the basement of Dallas Police Headquarters. Detectives have their guns drawn. Oswald has been shot. There is no question about it. Oswald has been shot. Pandemonium has broken loose here in the basement of Dallas Police Headquarters. Now, whether the bullet literally hit Oswald or not, we are not absolutely positive. But it is almost unbelievable. It's almost unbelievable. This is the back end of the end. If you can get back. If you can get back. As far as I know, no. Well, do you have the man who fired? We have a man. Yes. I didn't hear you. It's Oswald again. He is now lying very pale.
And Oswald was dead, or very soon afterwards died, but the doctors were looking after him. Now, you heard the commentator at that very dramatic moment, with television, cameramen, reporters, the whole world was in there. Talk about pandemonium. Now, why was it that this man, when held in custody, was being held as though in the middle of a crowd of 1,000 people by the Dallas police? They seem to have revealed everything all the time.
Well, I think the Dallas police were rather proud of having caught him so quickly. Another thing was that the president, having been shot on their doorstep, they were under the most unbelievable pressure. The thing to remember is that Dallas, though it is a rich, glittering, sizable city, is in many ways still a frontier town. And many of the niceties that we are accustomed to, say, in Britain and in New York and in the eastern United States are sometimes neglected. And particularly in these circumstances of utmost extremis, the police were excited, they were afraid, they were being watched by the entire world, and they were under the most terrible pressure by the press and by the television.
Do you think, though, that they are likely now to tighten up their relationship somewhat with the press, the television, with everybody else? They seem to have done everything for them up to this moment, but what's going to happen now?
Well, I assume that hereafter or thereafter the relations have been tighter, but thereafter it didn't matter so much.
You don't think the press has, press, I include everything by the word,
yes,
press, you don't think it has too much license, when they put it so bluntly to you, in America?
Perhaps in this particular case, but generally no.
No.
In this case, I think they probably paraded Oswald around too much and put him in front of our cameras too much.
And lost him.
Yes.
Now, let us move on to the question of why should it have been Lee Oswald. There are many arguments about this. Nobody really knows why, except he was an unstable and very odd character, and I suppose could be called a fanatic, really
yes.
not. Let's now look at a recording taken from an NBC program, of which, incidentally, the whole is going to be shown in the second channel of BBC television later tonight, if you want to see it, dealing with this whole matter. And it is an interview which Oswald gave in the course of this program, in which he talks about what his beliefs are. Quite revealing.
Are you a Marxist?
Well, I have studied Marxist philosophy, yes, sir, and also other philosophers.
But are you a Marxist? I think you did admit on an earlier radio interview that you consider yourself a Marxist.
Well, I would very definitely say that I am a Marxist. That is correct. But that does not mean, however, that I'm a communist.
He says that he's not a communist, but he is a Marxist. Does this explain the whole thing? No.
Sir, it doesn't explain anything. This distinction is a rather nice one, a rather fine one. It is sometimes drawn, though I must say I've never understood it. It seems to me, Mr. Dimbleby, that in attempting to analyze, if that's what we were trying to do, the Kennedy murder, if to analyze means to look for and perhaps to illuminate the meaning, it is impossible to do in this case because there isn't any meaning. The murder of John Kennedy was a totally meaningless act on the part of, this may sound cruel, but I think it's fair, on the part of a meaningless person. It was not a political act. Abraham Lincoln was killed by an embittered Southerner who hoped he would somehow redress the South's grievances by killing the president. In this case, Oswald had no reason for killing John Kennedy. Even if, whatever he was, Marxist, communist, whatever, he had no reason to dislike him. Kennedy was not a red baiter. He was anti-communist, as most of us are, but he was not a red baiter or a professional witch hunter. He was not a McCarthy. So when I have now and in the past tried to find some meaning in it, I can't find any. There just isn't. It was the senseless act of a senseless man.
Do you think, though, that resulting from this Warren report, there may come a tightening up of American Secret Service methods and perhaps FBI methods, which may make life in the future safer for American presidents, four of whom, have in fact been murdered?
Perhaps. I wouldn't think it would make a great deal of difference because anytime the president appears in public, particularly at a ceremony or event announced in advance, he is in danger. Anytime he's exposed to a crowd, he's in danger. You cannot protect him completely unless you move him around the country inside an iron tank.
As indeed the Warren report said, behind plate glass all his life, or bulletproof glass.
Yes,
nevertheless, you can tighten up all your available agencies.
Well, you certainly can solve the problem that existed in this case. The FBI knew Oswald was a mentally unhealthy man. It knew he was in Dallas, but it did not tell the Secret Service.
No, and there's the flaw.
Yes.
David Brinkley, thank you very much for helping us tonight.
Thank you, sir.
Now, a question arises, which we may look at perhaps ourselves domestically. Have we anything to learn from this? Famous people, leaders of heads of states, are traveling all over the world all the time. General de Gaulle, at this moment in South America, frightening his own security guards to death. The possibility, rumored, that Mr. Khrushchev may be coming to this country next year, the problems that will arise there. And, if you like to look more closely ahead, Her Majesty the Queen going next week to Canada. Problems of protection and safety arising all the time. Sitting on my right hand is a man who for many years was in MI5 and was also the head of the special branch of Scotland Yard. He was then Police Commander Leonard Burt, now retired, and Mr. Burt. Do you think, really, that we have got in this country much to learn from what happened to President Kennedy and from this report?
No, I think not.
Tell me why not.
Well, I believe it would be possible for such a person to be known to 3 different agencies without the special branch knowing. If I understand the report correctly, 3 different organizations knew of the existence of a potential assassin. And the special branch would have known that. And they would have taken certain precautions. The man would never have been allowed to occupy a window whilst the procession was going along. And moreover, he could easily have been put under surveillance the whole time.
You would think, from what you've read of this, that the agencies over there had enough information to warrant having followed Burt, kept an eye on Oswald before this came happened.
Yes, of course. Should never be allowed to occupy a window alone.
Are you satisfied yourself? You've only been retired from all this 4 years, so you're bang up to date on it, really. Are you satisfied that our measures and our precautions are safe and good?
Oh, I think they're good.
What sort of thing do you do? Can you tell me very quickly something?
Oh, yes, on a formal procession, we make inquiries of all windows overlooking the route and hold the person, the tenants or the landlord responsible.
Is it true you look under the streets as well?
Indeed, yes, on occasion we look under manholes.
And what about identifying possible dangers?
Well, we have a very comprehensive registry in the special branch. It's so comprehensive with photographs and that kind of thing, and some of our fellows are given, indeed all the fellows on the line of route, are giving photographs of extremists and likely people who might cause trouble.
And to put it very briefly, to sum it up, you don't think that what did happen with the case of a man like Oswald could in fact have happened here?
Well, I'm putting my neck out, aren't I, to say it couldn't happen here, but it's highly improbable.
Leonard Burt, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, sir.